A mother is suing the federal government after her daughter is murdered.
If they would have done their jobs, she would still be here today.
Why she says Homeland Security could have prevented her death. The governor announces he's cutting funding to state correctional services.
I don't think his priority is in public safety.
Why some argue this will make communities less safe. Violence in city classrooms, teachers hitting students with rulers, throwing chairs, allowing a child to be taped to a chair. Fox 45 News Project Baltimore takes a closer look into what's going on in some Baltimore City public schools. A fugitive wanted for the murder of an Army Reserve sergeant is captured.
All I can say is thank God, amen.
How police tracked him down right here in Baltimore as his former commander reflects on the tragic loss.
They took that leader away from the Army.
Live from WBFF in Baltimore, this is Fox 45 News at 10.
Thank you for joining us. I'm Kai Jackson.
And I'm Mary Bubala. Tonight, Fox 45 News is combing through Governor Moore's public safety budget, which shows several funding cuts within the Department of Public Safety and Correctional Services.
Some elected officials say the governor's budget isn't lining up with his tough on crime message in Annapolis.
It was nice that the governor played lip service to the notion of public safety, but at some point, you've got to put your money where your mouth is.
But if we're just going to reallocate funds and decrease funds, that's not going to solve problems, and it's going to show Marylanders where our priorities are. And
we will have more on that story in just a minute. But first, the family of a 20-year-old woman allegedly killed by an MS-13 gang member is now suing the federal government. Kayla Hamilton's mother argues her daughter's killer should never have been allowed in the country. Fox 45's Jessica Babb joins us in studio with the family's push for some accountability tonight. Jessica?
Tammy Nobles, Kayla Hamilton's mom, is suing the Department of Homeland Security and the Department of Human Services. She says agents should have stopped the suspect at the border and more thoroughly vetted him before allowing him in. If they had, she says Kayla Hamilton would likely still be alive.
She had high-functioning autism. She was a sweetheart. She was very happy and had a great outlook on life.
But just days after turning 20, police say a suspect broke into her Aberdeen room, raped and strangled her. A House Judiciary Committee report says the suspect was 16 years old and was allowed to enter the U.S. as an unaccompanied alien child. That report says he previously was arrested in El Salvador for illicit association with the MS-13 gang.
We will be filing a $100 million lawsuit against Department of Homeland Security and Department of Health and Human Services. Why? Because they catastrophically failed Kayla Hamilton.
And if they would have done their jobs, she would still be here today.
Attorney Brian Claypool says DHS failed to follow proper protocol, checking for gang-related tattoos and fully vetting the identity of the suspect.
All DHS had to do was make a simple phone call to the El Salvadorian consulate, and he, again, would have been disqualified from entering the country.
Department of Health and Human Services did not verify a sponsor.
The House Judiciary Committee report also says while the suspect's homicide charge was pending related to Kayla's
tax lien that was placed on their Baltimore home as well as future properties. Mosby's defense team has long argued she did not know about the tax lien because Nick was the one taking care of the couple's finances. Evident during this January 2022 news conference when Mosby's previous legal team claimed to have never seen the tax lien.
According to the indictment, the IRS sent them each a letter. So you're saying that she didn't open the mail?
I looked for the tax lien myself. Could not find it.
I have a copy I can show you.
I know you do. You know how we found it? We got it from the press.
Mosby's new legal team now says she trusted people around her, telling the jury everything Mosby did when she bought her 2 vacation homes in Florida, quote, was submitted in good faith. It was submitted without criminal intent. Marilyn Mosby is innocent. Mosby's also accused of lying to mortgage lenders, telling them she would not use the properties as rentals. The second witness of the day, the president of Executive Villas, Florida, the company Mosby signed this contract with to oversee management of her Kissimmee home 1 week before actually closing on it. Leaving court, Mosby and her team staying tight-lipped as everyone prepares for court to resume Tuesday morning. Prosecutors are expected to call 4 witnesses on Tuesday, and it's still unclear if Nick or Marilyn Mosby will take the stand and testify. In Greenbelt, Mackenzie Frost, Fox 45 News.
And Fox 45 News has been following the controversies surrounding Marilyn Mosby for years. You can find all of our past reporting on any new developments in court on our website, foxbaltimore.com.
Still ahead on Fox 45 News at 10 o'clock tonight. The Republican presidential primary hasn't happened, but rumors are swirling about who Donald Trump would choose as a running mate if he wins. A look ahead at the New Hampshire primary. The family and friends of an Army reservist who was shot and killed in 2022 speak out. How authorities captured a suspect after a year and a half on the run.
And I'm Wyatt Everhart. One more clear, cold night before we see the arrival of milder air and even spring-like rains into Maryland. We'll have the details.
Teachers hitting students with rulers and a child taped to a chair. Project Baltimore is looking into what's really happening inside some Baltimore City public schools following a school system investigation.
And as we head to break, we are looking live at M&T Bank Stadium, where the Ravens will host the Kansas City Chiefs in the AFC Championship game this Sunday. Morgan Atzett will have a preview coming up on Sports Unlimited. Teachers hitting students with rulers, throwing chairs, allowing a child to be taped to a chair.
Internal investigations from North Avenue obtained by Project Baltimore's Chris Papps sheds light on what's happening inside some Baltimore City schools.
Patrice Bell, for 32 years, taught in Baltimore City public schools. When she retired in 2022, she says she left a school system that overall was not any better than the one she started in decades earlier.
You didn't see much improvement in 32 years?
Mm-mm. No.
An outlook that's hard to accept.
It's demoralizing. Do you want to call it deflating? Yeah, you think, what am I doing here? You know, what am I doing?
Baltimore is a tough city. Nearly a quarter of its residents live in poverty. The murder rate is one of the highest in the nation, and schools are not immune to the city's failures. But a bigger problem, she says, is that teachers are not supported by the school system when dealing with misbehaving students, a reoccurring theme that played out over her 32 years teaching at schools throughout the city.
They're not taken seriously. They're really not taken seriously. And we're the ones that are on the ground floor and we know what's going on. There should be programs in there to help, de-escalate.
Bell says for some teachers, the pressure can mount and reach a breaking point.
The teachers aren't getting the support.
And then they can just snap.
Yes.
And in these city schools documents obtained by Project Baltimore through a public records request, we can see where that scenario may have played out. These are the findings from internal investigations over the last 4 years, conducted by North Avenue, into its own employees. In about half of all the reports, city schools investigated allegations of physical abuse or threats by teachers and other employees towards students. In this internal investigation, the employee was observed hitting a student with a wooden ruler when the student was having a meltdown in the hallway. In another, an employee threw a chair several feet and stated she would like to throw the student in the same manner. This employee allowed students to tape another student to a chair in the classroom. This report describes a situation where the employee struck a student with a classroom door. Here, a teacher sprayed a student in the face with a bottle of water to cause the student's eyes to burn because the student did not have her mask on. Another employee was accused of inappropriate, aggressive physical contact with a student when the employee removed her keys and cell phone from her belt, unfastened and removed her belt, and held it up towards the student as a threat of punishment. This happened after the student, according to the report, became verbally disruptive. In all of these internal investigations, the names of the schools and employees are redacted, but in each one, city schools substantiated the allegations, and the employees involved no longer work for the school system. City schools declined an interview with Project Baltimore, but called the actions of the accused employees unacceptable, adding, "We took definitive action that protected our students while holding those responsible accountable. The outcomes of those investigations prove our commitment to students' health and safety."
Well, I think people give up.
While Bell says there's no excuse for violence directed at students, she understands how teachers could reach a breaking point.
Punched, kicked, thrown bottles at me.
Project Baltimore over the years has interviewed other educators, some in Baltimore County.
I would come home exhausted just from having 3 and 4 panic attacks a day,
who were exposed to school violence and developed PTSD. And the National Education Association, the country's largest teachers union, surveyed its members in 2022 on key issues causing teachers to leave the job. Behavioral issues were considered a serious problem by 76% of the educators who responded. Bell says principals have to help teachers before they get overwhelmed, because ignoring the problem is also a disservice to students.
I really miss the kids. I really miss the kids. I don't care how bad their behavior was. I found that is just, they were reaching out for something.
I'm Chris Pabst, and this is Project Baltimore.
Project Baltimore wants to hear from you. Do you have a story to share about your child's education or a concern you'd like our team to investigate? Call the tip line on your screen or send an email to projectbaltimore@foxbaltimore.com. You can also find us on social media.
Elected leaders across Maryland warn Governor Moore's proposed public safety budget cuts will hurt the state in areas where it needs the most help, including juvenile crime response.
Fox 45's Keith Daniels joins us live with a closer look at the numbers. Keith?
Well, Kai and Mary, the Baltimore Youth Detention Center and the Baltimore Central Booking and Intake Center, part of those proposed budget cuts. The Youth Center at nearly 7% and the Intake Central Booking at 10%. And tonight, for some observers, that's a concern. Tonight, a closer look at Governor Wes Moore's budget for fiscal year 2025. Fox 45 News research team taking a deeper dive, finding it's a budget that calls for a decrease in cash for critical services provided by the Maryland Department of Public Safety and Correctional Services. As part of Governor Moore's $63 billion budget announced Wednesday, DPSCS will receive cuts within its corrections and pretrial detention divisions. A move a Maryland lawmaker
With any government, you can look at where the money goes and see the priorities.
and prosecutor
At some point, you got to put your money where your mouth is.
warn funding cuts to correctional services will put Marylanders' safety at risk. According to the proposed budget books, the state's parole and probation agency will also see its funding shrink. Delegate Michael Griffith, Republican from Harford County, looking at the cuts with caution.
I mean, we're creating a menacing environment by not putting our money where our mouth is, and that's supporting innocent citizens.
Administrative costs for the Division of Corrections reduced by 18%. Division of Parole and Probation reduced by 7%. DPSCS claims the cuts are part of statewide across-the-board streamlining, primarily associated with administrative costs. Still, for Griffith, the warning.
I believe this is good intentioned. I just believe deeply misguided and will cause harm, as we've seen with the other pieces of legislation we've rolled out in the last few years.
Griffith referring to the Child Interrogation Protection Act, sometimes called the Juvenile Interrogation Act, a piece of legislation that some state prosecutors and county leaders blame for the state's juvenile crime crisis. Now, concern over probation services and proposed cuts that Carroll County State's Attorney Haven Schumacher believes could make it more difficult for his office to hold potential criminals responsible.
Folks who are given a term of probation have to be supervised by somebody. This proposed cut would seem to me to run counter to their mission of making sure people don't engage in repeat criminal activity.
Well, the governor's office defending the budget cuts, saying in part the proposed budget accounts for the transition from pandemic-fueled funding levels to more normalized expenditures across agencies. We're live tonight. Keith Daniels, Fox 45 News.
These proposed cuts come as the Baltimore City State's Attorney's Office is questioning the intake process at the Department of Juvenile Services. Deputy Chief of the Juvenile Division, Catherine Rosenblatt, says she hasn't seen a uniform process for how DJS handles cases.
I think there is an issue with consistency in the city. Currently, they act as a bit of a gatekeeper because it's their intake officers who are making the decision whether the case should be charged immediately or should be charged later, but still charged, or even not charged at all.
As Keith mentioned, the proposed budget cuts include funding for parole and probation agency. DJS Secretary Vincent Giraldi has spoken out against parole and probation in the past.
One of the two things probation and parole are supposed to do is keep us safer. Parole made us less safer. Probation had no impact.
Some criminal law experts say young people are more likely to become repeat offenders if they don't face serious consequences.
There needs to be some type of supervision for these people. I don't agree that all juveniles need to end up in a juvenile detention center, but again, some of them need to have some type of correctional supervision, aka probation. Because, again, it's important for them to understand that what they did was wrong.
Governor Wes Moore stands by Vincent Giraldi, calling him a reformer. Senator Corey McCray of Baltimore says there's been a lack of transparency within DJS since Giraldi took his office. Early this month, McCray told Fox 45 News that he's drafting legislation calling for more transparency. Before coming to Maryland, Secretary Giraldi spent 7 months leading New York's Corrections Department and overseeing Rikers Island. Lawmakers and police officers who worked with him believe his policies led to, quote, deplorable conditions at the jail.
Nobody thought he did a good job. Nobody can say that he improved
the criminal justice system or the jails in New York City. He made them much worse, period.
He came in here with this mindset of providing everything for the inmate population and not providing things that we needed. Wasn't concerned about our well-being at all.
Fox 45 News asked the governor's office about what steps his administration took to vet Secretary Schiraldi and if the governor is aware of the humanitarian crisis in Rikers Island. So far, we have not received a response. That brings us to our question of the day. Do you trust state leaders to solve the problems in DJS? 95% of those who voted say no. To make your voice heard, head to foxbaltimore.com/vote.
Coming up, one Baltimore City Council member calls for a meeting on bike lanes, her concerns with the city's $73 million plan.
And it was another fairly chilly day of weather across Maryland, but the snow getting ready to start melting in a big way this week. We've got milder air on the march, and we've also got quite a bit of rain on the march. Take a look. You see that Gulf Coast moisture coming in out of Dallas. That'll be in here toward Wednesday this week. And then temperatures tonight, while below freezing, are set to warm up quite a bit. We're talking about 40s, 50s, even 60s. It's all coming up.
All right, Wyatt, thank you. And as we head to break, another live look at M&T Bank Stadium as the Ravens prepare to host the AFC Championship.
With one more win over the Chiefs in the AFC Championship Sunday, the Ravens would be Super Bowl bound. As far as on the current Ravens roster, only 5 players know what it takes to win a Super Bowl. Receiver Nelson Aguilar, who had a touchdown Saturday against Houston in the divisional round, won a Super Bowl in 2017 with the Eagles. And he has made his first season with the Ravens his mission to spread the message of what it takes to win it all.
You have an opportunity, you have to be present. It ain't about what the game is, it's the fact that you get another game and make the plays one play at a time. And and then also if we don't make a play, remind them to just get back up there and bounce back, because that's what it is. The playoffs is all about just competing. Really, it's the ultimate competition, because stuff's not going to be perfect.
The AFC Championship is set for the bank Sunday, the 28th, kickoff between the Chiefs and Ravens at 3. The Ravens and Chiefs did not meet in this regular season. Lamar Jackson beat the Chiefs for the first time in the 2021 regular season right at M&T Bank Stadium.
Morgan, thank you. And of course, the excitement is building throughout the Ravens flock on social media. Let's take a look, folks, at some of these comments. Look at here. Casey, not ready. Let's go. Absolutely, I agree. Hopefully the Ravens can pull this off. We hope they can, too. Look at this one. Detroit and Ravens in Super Bowl 58. Wouldn't that be nice? That'd be a nice one to see. Lamar Jackson, or this is going to be the best. No, to be the best, you have to beat the best. And last one, really quickly here, Tom. Please finish this. I'm thinking of the Karate Kid, Mary, when he said finish him at the end. But in this instance, we're talking to the Ravens. Finish the job.
We got the message. I like it. Well, if you plan on heading to the game, tickets go on sale tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. More information available on the Ravens website. Again, kickoff set for Sunday at 3.
Well, coming up on Fox 45, a fugitive wanted for the murder of an Army reservist is captured. We hear from the victim's former commander and share how police tracked down the suspect.
The Republican presidential primary isn't over, but already speculation about who former President Trump might pick as a running mate. I'm Atrell Nashar with the list of names coming up.
Fox 45 is following new developments in 3 big stories tonight. Nikki Haley is looking to gain ground on former President Trump in tomorrow's New Hampshire primary. Now, Trump is hinting that he may already have eyes on a potential running mate.
One city council member calls for a hearing into Baltimore's controversial bike lane plan. Why, she says, her constituents' concerns aren't being heard.
And a sense of closure for those who serve with an Army Reserve Sergeant Ryan Harris as his suspected killer is captured.
And we begin there. Last year, Harris's accused killer, Jamal Smith, was featured on Maryland's Most Wanted. Fox
45's Alexa Ashwell has the update after an 18-month manhunt.
Jamal Smith had been on the run for the past year and a half. Investigators say he was recently named as a suspect in another crime, now taken into custody after a barricade situation in Baltimore City. A year and a half after Army Reserve Sergeant Ryan Harris was shot and killed just blocks from Baltimore's Inner Harbor, the man wanted for his murder, Jamal Smith, taken into custody.
And all I can say is thank God, amen. Because it felt like there was no closure.
Master Sergeant Justin Simpson reacting to Smith's arrest. Investigators say the 32-year-old was taken into custody after agents pieced together he had been hiding out in a home here on North Milton Street in East Baltimore's Broadway East neighborhood.
Earlier this morning, the United States Marshal Service Capitol Area Regional Fugitive Task Force and the Warrant Apprehension Unit for Baltimore PD surrounded the home.
Smith, investigators say, initially refusing to come out.
They activated BPD SWAT,
but soon after surrendered. Smith was featured on Maryland's Most Wanted last year after investigators identified him as the suspect who shot Sergeant Harris and 2 other men following a dispute back in June 2022.
Surveillance cameras caught an altercation.
Exactly what the dispute was about, investigators haven't said. Sergeant Harris, a father of 2, was killed. Master Sergeant Simpson recalling receiving that phone call.
These guys are my family. So as a person who has served overseas in a wartime situation, you build those bonds quickly. So I've learned how to build those bonds because it helps with the team building, that aspect of it. So hearing that he was senselessly killed in the way he was, instantly, like emotionally, it takes it out of you, because we're not in the battle zone. We're in the United States of America. And that's not the call I was expecting to get. And I cried.
But today, a welcomed phone call, news of an arrest. Investigators revealing not only was Smith already wanted at the time of Harris's murder, but had been involved in at least one other crime since going on the run.
This guy's been involved in ongoing alleged criminal conduct to include violent felonies. He was wanted on a federal supervised release violation, and ultimately he was involved in some type of domestic situation in Baltimore County.
Let's get to the trial and let's do what we got to do to put a bow on it and just wrap this all up nice and neat. And because I can only imagine what his family feels like, because he was a promising soldier. They took that leader away from the Army, and it just hurts my heart.
In addition to the murder charge, Smith is also facing 2 counts of attempted murder for the 2 other victims in this triple shooting turned homicide. The investigation ongoing. I'm Alexa Ashwell, and this is Maryland's Most Wanted.
Baltimore is still reeling from a violent weekend that saw 5 people killed on Friday night alone. 3 people were killed in a quadruple shooting in Northwest Baltimore. Then 2 hours later, there was a double shooting in Curtis Bay. Now, one of the victims, 60-year-old grandmother Mary Lou Schumann. She was leaving a business in the area when she was caught in the gunfire and killed. Schumann's family spoke with Fox 45 News about their loss.
Just people, they have no regard for human life. And it don't matter what you do or what's going on. You could just be walking down the street and just be at the wrong place at the wrong time and lose your life. It's so easy to get a gun. It doesn't matter how old you are.
According to Baltimore police, 11 people have been killed this year. That number nearly doubled over the past 3 days. 22 people have been shot and survived so far in 2024.
The vice president of the Baltimore City Council is calling for an informational hearing into bike lanes.
As a representative, it is my duty to consider the opinions and feelings of all parties involved, including our constituents in our diverse neighborhoods, whether in favor or against bike lanes.
Fox 45 News has been covering the topic of bike lanes for weeks, hearing from residents who say those lanes have been either hurting their neighborhoods or being done without getting input into those bike lanes. Now, some say they're in places and they're clogging up traffic and leading to backups. They say the placement of those bike lanes makes things less safe for drivers and pedestrians. Others point to the cost of the bike lanes, and Fox 45 News found documents showing the city has spent $21 million on bike lanes over 3 years.
But I don't think the average person has any idea how much money is being wasted on silly projects that have no impact, no positive impact on the great majority of the people.
The people
who are being affected and victimized by these decisions, these arbitrary and capricious spending of dollars, seem to have no voice. We've been ghosted by government.
It's not really safe for no bicyclists to be riding up and down this road, to be honest with you, because they got road rage up here.
Well, it's not clear when that hearing will happen. Fox 45 News will follow the story and keep you updated on air and online. You can find our past reporting on bike lanes on our website, foxbaltimore.com.
Prince George's County Executive Angela Alsobrooks is picking up another endorsement in her campaign for U.S. Senate. Congressman John Sarbanes says Alsobrooks is a leader who will fight for Maryland. He calls Alsobrooks a champion of all that makes our democracy strong. Sarbanes is set to retire this fall after 18 years in Congress.
Alsobrooks and Congressman David Trone are widely regarded as the two frontrunners in that race. Fox 45 News sat down with Trone yesterday. He's pushing for a two-term limit in the Senate.
We need fresh blood, fresh people, fresh ideas, and we can't have someone there for 30, 40 years in the same seat running for 85 years old and running for re-election. Is that crazy? That's crazy.
Well, here in Baltimore City, voters overwhelmingly approved term limits for the mayor, comptroller, and city council members during the 2022 election. The bill limits those elected leaders to a two-term period of office in a 12-year period.
Well, the Republican presidential race is now down to two as former President Trump and Nikki Haley gear up for tomorrow's New Hampshire primary. Rumors are already swirling about who Trump could choose as a running mate should he hold on to his lead in the polls. National correspondent Audra El-Nashar has the latest.
Though he's not yet the official GOP presidential nominee, former President Trump toying with speculation about a running mate.
The person that I think I like is a very good person, pretty standard. I think people won't be that surprised. But I would say there's probably a 25% chance it would be that person.
But downplaying their importance.
It's never really had that much of an effect on an election.
Hours after Florida Governor Ron DeSantis dropped out of the race and endorsed Trump, the former president said this about a Trump-DeSantis ticket.
Everything's a possibility, but I think it's highly unlikely. I have a lot of great people.
Considered to be in the running, New York Congresswoman Elise Stefanik and South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem, both campaigning for Trump, demonstrating a non-negotiable quality for a Trump VP pick. Loyalty.
That the minute you cross him, the minute you undercut him, the minute you start speaking ill about him, his family, his businesses, really anything in his orbit, you're on the outside looking in.
It's part of the reason former Vice President Mike Pence isn't considered to be in the running. The two had a falling out after January 6th. Also, Pence said this in November 2022.
I think running for Vice President of the United States twice is enough for any American.
Okay.
A less direct answer coming from South Carolina Senator and former presidential candidate Tim Scott, who endorsed Trump but dodged the question when asked if he wants to be Trump's running mate.
That wasn't a no. That door is wide open. Fair read?
Well, Dana, you can take it any way you want.
Former candidates Vivek Ramaswamy and North Dakota Governor Doug Burgum also endorsed Trump. On Monday, Burgum fueled speculation he's vying for VP by announcing he won't seek a third term as governor. As for Trump's last remaining opponent, former South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley, she says being Trump's VP is off the table, and Trump says she probably wouldn't be chosen. To be expected of rivals now in a two-person race with a critical contest Tuesday in New Hampshire. On Capitol Hill, I'm Audra El-Nashar reporting.
Political commentator Armstrong Williams addressed the election and the politicians supporting former President Trump during his town hall tonight. The panelists weighed in on who the former president might pick as a running mate.
Senator Tim Scott is now engaged. He just, with all his might, endorsed Donald Trump. And so I began to wonder, engaged, forcefully endorsing Trump, is he the leading candidate as his VP? What do you think, Alex? I think there's something there.
Very good question. And I don't think it's outside the realm of possibility. They did seem to have a pretty cordial relationship throughout the campaign. He dropped out early and never really delivered any very strong criticisms like some of those. We all know Donald Trump really bristles at criticism and remembers those things for a long time. And I think him and Tim Scott got along pretty well. I've also heard rumors that Ben Carson is one of the leading potential contenders. So I think it'll be interesting, and we'll probably know in the not too distant future.
You can watch Armstrong Williams' entire town hall on our website, foxbaltimore.com. And stay with Fox 45 News. We'll have a complete report from New Hampshire coming up on the late edition.
New documents from the Department of Justice shine light on the Hunter Biden investigation, what they reveal, and those the investigation is moving forward.
Pretty chilly night out there with that breeze coming across that snowpack that is still in place in Baltimore. Several inches still on the ground. But I tell you, mild air on the way to melt that snow and quite a bit of rain. Talk about that spring-like weather coming up.